Social media posts falsely claim that USAID found no evidence of a massacre in Ethiopia's Tigray region. 2 weeks after Amnesty International released an in-depth investigation concluding that hundreds of civilians were killed by Eritrean forces in the city of Aksum in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Posts circulating on social media claimed that the United States Agency for International Development conducted its own investigation and found no evidence that the atrocities happened. This is false. USAID told AFP Fact-Check that the organization was not the source of these claims, which were also dismissed on social media. Some good news from USAID. #Aksum massacre neither occurred nor substantiated, reads the caption from a Facebook post published on March 9, 2021. The post, with more than 130 shares, includes a graphic of a news report by the Ethiopian Herald claiming USAID had found no evidence for the massacre following its own investigation. Similar claims were shared on Facebook. It was also retweeted hundreds of times on Twitter. However, the claims are false. USAID spokesman Ryan Isman told AFP Fact-Check in an email on March 11, 2021, that the organization was not the source of the quotes attributed to them in the article. Isman pointed to 2 tweets from USAID's official account that addressed the falsely attributed statements. Contrary to a recent report in the Ethiopian Herald about a USAID investigation in Aksum, USAID has neither conducted an investigation nor sent a team to investigate the reported events that took place in Aksum, reads one tweet, posted March 9, 2021. Another tweet in the same thread said, "The U.S. government encourages independent investigations into all reported incidents of atrocities and remains committed to providing humanitarian assistance to all people affected by the ongoing conflicts in Tigray and other parts of the country." On March 1, 2021, USAID assembled a disaster assistance response team to assess the situation in Tigray, identify priority needs for the scale-up of relief efforts, and work with partners to provide urgently needed assistance to conflict-affected populations across the region. AFP Fact-Check contacted the Ethiopian Herald about the newspaper's article but has yet to receive a response. This fact-check will be updated if we receive a comment. According to social media monitoring tool CrowdTangle, the article, published on March 9, 2021, has been shared on Facebook more than 1,100 times. Aksum Massacre. The false claims surfaced shortly after Amnesty International released an in-depth investigation based on satellite imagery and eyewitness testimonies that concluded the killing of hundreds of civilians in Aksum by Eritrean troops was coordinated and systematic and may also constitute crimes against humanity. The report from Amnesty found that between 19 and the 28th of November 2020, Eritrean troops operating in the Ethiopian city of Aksum, Tigray, committed a series of human rights and humanitarian law violations, including killing hundreds of civilians. The organization gathered testimonies from more than 240 people but was unable to independently verify the exact death toll. However, the report noted that corroborating testimonies and evidence indicated that hundreds died, as AFP reported.
The massacre took place in retaliation for an attempt by a small group of pro-TPLF fighters to attack an Eritrean base on a mountain in the middle of the city. And in retaliation for this attack, Eritrean forces shot wantonly at civilians and killed, we believe, hundreds of people over the course of roughly 24 hours. They also went around carrying house-to-house searchers and dragging mostly men out of their homes and shooting them on the streets or killing them in their homes. So this is really the main finding of our research. We've also documented indiscriminate shelling during the attack on the city by the joint Ethiopian and Eritrean forces on the 19th of November, as well as arbitrary mass detentions by Eritrean forces of civilians in the aftermath of the massacre, with clear threats to resume the killing in the event of new resistance. And we've also documented widespread and seemingly systematic looting by Eritrean forces of civilian property.
Until now, there hasn't been really confirmation about who the perpetrators are. You mentioned the trigger of this massacre that you're talking about. Did I hear you say Eritrean base in the Tigray region?
Yes, so after the joint force of Ethiopian and Eritrean soldiers entered the city on the 19th of November, Eritrean soldiers set up a base in a school which on this mountain which overlooks a city called Maikuho. And this is where the fighting took place in the morning of the 28th of November. And it's unclear how long the fighting started, but witnesses describe very trained Eritrean soldiers routing the fighters on the other side. Many actually men from Aksum joined the fight with sticks and rocks and were shot with through sniper rifles and machine guns.
What is the government of Ethiopia saying about this? Has there been any admission and action? You mentioned also about looting. One of the key information that we've been learning is that humanitarian food has been either looted or not being able to pass through to get to vulnerable people. If you could share a little bit about who is actually looting humanitarian aid and why is it not getting into the hands of vulnerable people who are basically, on the verge of starvation.
So we've shared our findings. We shared our findings with the Ambassador Redwan Hussein, the State Minister of Foreign Affairs, and at the time of writing, we hadn't received a response. We still haven't received a response from the Ethiopian government. So we don't know what the Ethiopian government has done to address these abuses. To address the question of looting, the looting, as I mentioned, was widespread and systematic. Eritrean forces looted hotels, factories, homes, government buildings, hospitals, shops, storage of food, and they also looted all sorts of objects, machinery, including water pumps and, bakery equipment and generators. They looted, cooking oil, lentils, flour. They looted valuables in, jewelry shops. They looted medication in the hospitals, according to witnesses. So it was very widespread and systematic. And so we call on UN-led investigation into these crimes. As you know, in international humanitarian law, indiscriminate attacks and deliberate attacks on civilians are war crimes. And the shelling, so the shelling of the city in the initial attack would fit these definitions. And in international humanitarian law, when attacks against civilians are widespread and systematic, they're crimes against humanity. And it seems pretty clear from the witnesses that the attack on civilians on the 28th and the 29th of November by Eritrean forces was a deliberate attempt to subdue any resistance in the city by terrorizing the population. And another evidence for that is the mass detention of civilians by the Eritrean forces in the aftermath of the massacre, and the very explicit threat that Eritrean officers made of renewing the killing in the events of new resistance. So we call on the UN-led investigation into these events. We also call on the Ethiopian government to grant unfettered access to Tigray, not only to humanitarian organizations, but also to human rights and media organizations.
First of all, in relation to Ethiopia, We have no proof of the presence of Eritrean troops inside Ethiopia. I confronted the Prime Minister with that question, and he guaranteed to me that they have not entered Tigrayan territory, that the only area where they are is the area that corresponded to the disputed territory between the two countries that in the peace agreement was decided to give back to Eritrea. So this was the testimony that was given to me by the Prime Minister when I confronted him exactly with that question.